Hi, today I am doing some resining. I need some more basket bottoms, so I need to work on some of these little geode slices I've been saving up. So first part of resining is preparation. Cover your work area with wax paper or something of that nature that you don't want to get your counters dirty. You can wear gloves. I'm not today just because I don't feel like working with gloves on. That's my only excuse. So then prep your molds. If you're using molds, now there's a couple ways you can do these slices. You can do a little dam around it and use that as a dam to hold your resin in. I like to use little forms. I save all kinds of forms, and then I put the wax paper in to just hold it there, and then I'll show you later how after it dries for 6 to 8 hours you can take it out and cut it. I also use little plastic molds like lids, whatever I can find that I think can create a little dam. So just all sorts of things that you can use. Just the resin molds, just how they are. This one seems to fit perfectly. I have hundreds of molds, literally. Some just fit perfect, and I know it's going to be the perfect amount of resin around it. Now, the resin I like to use, I've tried a lot of them, but right now, this art resin is my favorite. So you take and you will measure, first of all, the resin, however much you want to use. I usually work with a cup of each, and I just have enough molds set up ready to use. So art resin, I like it because it doesn't seem to yellow, and also it hardens in a timely fashion. It gives you enough time to work with it, and it's non-toxic, so it doesn't smell. Sometimes I still wear a little mask. Generally, I don't have to with this. So I'm all prepared here. Over on the side, I don't have enough room for the camera, but I have some other molds waiting to use the extra resin. I always have extra items ready to resin prior to starting. So I've mixed half and half. Some people weigh it, or you can use a measuring cup. I use a measuring cup, and I've prepared this, mixed it for 2 to 3 minutes, slowly, not to create bubbles. And I've let it set so that it starts hardening and starts getting nice and thick and warm. So I usually leave it sit for 10 to 15 minutes. So I'm gonna set everything up and start pouring and show you how we do that. I usually take all these little gemstones and set them to the side so they're not in the way to pour. And just try to keep everything neat and clean, and that we don't waste resin or mess up our molds. Okay, I'll be right back. So the next step is to pour a little bit of resin into each mold, just enough to cover the bottom, because then we're going to torch it or use a blow dryer and get the bubbles out of the bottom. So just pour a light coating, enough to cover the bottom. Now, when you're doing these geode slices, you do waste a bit of resin because you're overflowing the sides a little bit, and you're going to cut that off as it gets harder in about 6 to 8 hours. So this one needs a little bit more because it's not moving. So see, the resin is thickening a little bit, but slowly. It doesn't move too quick. And I usually warm my resin before I start working with it so that it cures a little faster. So then I like to torch sometimes to get rid of these bubbles in the bottom. Be careful not to burn your molds, of course. They are plastic, but they do withstand quite a bit of heat. So this will get the bubbles out of the bottoms of each of your molds. Or you can use your little blow dryer to do that. Make sure to put your everything away where it's not gonna get burnt. So once I feel like the bubbles are out, I'll probably let it sit a little bit and torch it again. These molds are great. They're little sandwich boxes, but you can put the paper down below and it holds it nice and tight. So I'm just gonna let this sit a minute till we get the bubbles out, and I'll show you how we place them in the molds. So the bubbles did not seem like they were clearing as much as I would like, so I got out my blow dryer. Well, this is actually a heat gun, but you can use a regular blow dryer. Just be careful to have it on a low setting. Go over the top of it. Now make sure not to overfill your molds, because once you put your, you kind of have to gauge it a little, because once you put your stone in here, this one has a lot of bubbles. Just from experience, I know to try to get the bubbles out of the bottom prior to putting your stone in. So here's a little blue stone. Just place it in slowly, because if you plop it too hard, you could create bubbles on the bottom, and then you're gonna have to go back and resin it a second time. So see, there's just a little bit of resin in the bottom so that it will seep up and start covering your gemstone. This is kind of an odd shaped mold, but it fits this little purple one perfectly. It's kind of like putting together a puzzle. You just figure out what fits in what mold, and if you don't have a mold, you create your own by just putting your paper there. You go. So now, I don't know if you could see this one over here, but I am going to use this for 2, and I'll just cut it apart when it gets tacky enough. But there will be enough resin around it to drill it. See there, I fit 2 in one mold. Now here's this little pink one over here. I'll put that one down in the little pink mold. So I'm going to let these set for a minute and just kind of let the bubbles come up from underneath, because a lot of times when you demold, if you don't do that, you're going to end up with some big bubbles behind, and you'll have to refill on another molding. Okay, we'll let these set and let the bubbles rise, and then I'll show you how to pour a level over the top. So we are back. It's been about 15 minutes. I'm letting the resin just kind of thicken a little, and you can see it's kind of come up the sides a little bit. So it comes up the sides of these little geodes. You could see where they've made it up the way and some haven't. So a little bit of resin on top, because I like to cover the top of the stone with resin. So I will put a little bit on top, or if there's a lot in the mold, I kind of just push it up over as it thickens, so it stays there a little bit better. But you want to make sure it's self-leveling, so oops, I dripped there a little bit. It's self-leveling, so it's going to run back down over, but it'll give it a nice clear coat on top of the geode, because you don't want these to break, so it just kind of enforces it as well. So I put a little bit more on top if it needs it. If you have enough around your geode, you could just smooth it up over. So we're just trying to give it a thin layer on top to protect the stone, as well as enough around the sides that it hardens and you can drill it and have the appropriate holes there. Now this one's a little bit different. This is wood. Let's see, I don't know if you can see that. I might have to move the camera. This is a little hamsa hand with a third eye in it over here that I'm working on. So that's going to be a little bit different to deal with. I did seal it because it's a form of wood, so you're going to get a lot of extra bubbles. So you just try to find the right mix of resin without overdoing it so that you're not wasting your resin, because it's a little expensive. But you can just keep working with it. You're going to get more bubbles. You watch it about every 15 minutes. You can go back if you see big bubbles and the blow dryer or heat gun doesn't get to them. You can use a little toothpick to take them out. So I'm going to go back and keep working on these. Cover this one a little bit. It needs just a little bit more. And I'm working with the same resin that I previously mixed. So it is getting thicker. And this is kind of a full day process. You leave it for 15 minutes, then you come back to it and check it and poke any bubbles that are forming, move it around, make sure the geode's covered, make sure you have enough resin, and you can just use the existing resin in the mold to do this. Oops, I just dripped. I'll clean that up. I like to use cotton swabs to kind of go around and clean up any little drips I've got. But I'm just making sure that everything's covered because I want that nice coat on top of resin to protect these beautiful stones, as well as around the sides, at least about a 1/2 inch around the sides, so I can drill them and cut, so I could cut the resin when it gets hard and then drill the holes around it about 1/4 inch to a 1/2 inch. So see, I'm just covering it, then I'm going to come back and hit it with a torch, and I'll show you as they progress. Thanks for watching. Now these have a good amount of resin in here, so don't even have to pour any more over. I just spoon it over. There you go. See, there they are. These are just getting spooned over. Okay, I'll come back as the drying time progresses. Thanks for watching. Okay, things are progressing nicely. I've made sure, here's another little spot. These agate slices or geode slices are all covered. Sometimes it does run down the side. So one thing I wanted to mention also is that resin, if the thicker it is, the quicker it's going to cure because it gets hotter. And as you're blow drying it or firing it to remove bubbles, it heats it up as well. So if it's a thinner coat of resin, it's going to take a little bit longer to cure. If it's thicker, it'll probably, now nothing is definite, but if it's thicker, it's going to take a shorter time to cure. That's kind of a rule of thumb. And basically, you just have to watch it. I check them, I let them sit about 15 minutes, and then I come back and check and make sure I've removed bubbles and make sure that the stone on top is coated and everything's looking kosher, and I just work from there. And they will float sometimes, especially if you're on an uneven surface. Try to be on a level surface, but make sure it's a level surface. That makes it easier, but they will float, especially real thin slices. So just work with it. Continue working with it. To me, it's a day process. I don't plan anything that day other than resining, if I'm resining, other than maybe a short trip out and I get back and check it, because there's things that you will have to correct. You will have to pop bubbles. You're going to have to move them to the center of the mold, items like that. So it's kind of a practice type situation. And if you fail at something, you'll know better the next time. It's just a learning process, and you just keep practicing until you've got it down. And I've been doing resining now for about 4 years, and I still have issues. So sometimes, generally you can correct them, but sometimes you can't. That's just the way it works. So make sure you're doing what you're doing. If you are trying to resin an old brooch, say of a family member or something that's important, practice a little bit before you get into a situation that you can't get out of. Thanks for watching, and I'll be back later. I see there is a little sparkle of something in here that doesn't belong. I'll take that out. Okay, thanks for watching. I'll show you as it progresses. Okay, we're back. About an hour has passed. I just kind of let these settle in. I'm going back, popping. There's a few little bubbles in different places. Some little pieces of fuzz have gotten in. So I've just kind of pulled those out to make sure we don't have any debris in here. So the resin is still liquidy enough that you can play with it after an hour. So if you see bubbles around, sometimes they pop up like here, down around the geode slice. So at this point you could still mess with it, but pretty soon you're not, there's a little sparkle in there I don't want. So after this point, you really don't want to mess with it anymore because it's just going to create problems. So it's about ready to set up. I'll just leave it alone for about 6 to 8 hours. The ones that are in the molds like this, and I'm going to just leave in the molds, in the silicone molds, I'll just leave them 24 hours. The slices that I want to pull out with the parchment paper, I'll wait about 6 to 8 hours and test them. And then I'll pull it out, cut around it, lay it down to dry a little more. But you have to pick it at the perfect point. So I'll show you that when I get that to that point. But the ones in the molds, I'm just going to leave 24 hours, sit, let them dry. If I do see a big bubble like I noticed here, I'll try to get it out. But basically just watching it at this point, make sure nothing's shifting, moving, because you want to have enough resin around it to be able to drill the holes so that you can attach your pine needle basket to it. So that's about it. I will be back in about 6 to 8 hours to show you how I cut around the parchment paper or wax paper, whichever you use to lay it on. Thanks for watching. Hi there. Okay, so it's been about 8 hours and I checked these little slices and they're seeming like they're ready to be cut. So I want to cut them about a 1/2 inch around, leave about a 1/2 inch so I can drill to have something to attach the pine needles to. So here's this one. It's feeling pretty well set. So I've got scissors here and I've got a couple pairs and I've oiled them. I've just brushed a little bit of cooking oil on them and I'll show you how to cut them. I won't cut all of them, but I'll cut 1 or 2. And I've got a little table set up over here with some clean parchment paper to let them dry on because they're still not all the way set. So I'm just gonna start and see, it looks like it's just about perfect. Now this gets kind of messy. Sometimes it's not set totally right and it starts running over. So you really got to time it just about right. And it's kind of something you have to work with till you get used to it. So this one's working very well. A lot of times the resin is still sticky, so sometimes it'll stick to your hands or... So here you go. I've left about 1/2 inch to a 1/4 inch around, and that is just gonna make it perfect to drill some holes in about a 1/4 inch apart. So at this point, I'm gonna take this little guy and I am gonna put him over here on my clean parchment paper and let him finish drying all the way. Get rid of all of this remaining stickiness here. And let's try another one. Well, first of all, I wanted to show you. So here is a slice that is in just a regular mold. And see, it's a little thicker and it's setting up nicely. However, I'll just leave it in that mold all night, 24 hours. But you can see it pulls away easy. If it's not ready to pull out, it's not going to pull away. It's going to stick to the side. So we'll just leave that one alone there. So here's a pink one I did. And we'll just show you how to cut that one again. I think I'll move these over so I don't mess them up. Because if you cut some of this and it pops off, it could get on one of the other items and then they're just going to stick together and it's going to be a big old mess. So see what I mean about wasting resin? If you don't get a mold that fits just right, you're going to be cutting away a lot of resin. And I kind of hate to waste it, but you know, sometimes you just don't have any choice. So here we go. This is cutting just like butter. This is working just perfectly. So as long as it's cured to the appropriate amount of time, and you can only figure that out by trying it, it cuts away pretty easily. And sometimes you can get little specks of resin that you've dribbled on here, and that'll fall on top of them. So you've just got to be careful because you don't want to mess something up that you've worked on so hard to make. So you can see this is a very time-consuming project. It does, you know, take a lot of patience and a lot of know-how. You got to just kind of work with it until you get it right. And sometimes, you know, it works out really good. Like I've been very lucky with these two slices. They've worked out very well. There's the pink one. Okay, so as I said, this is still tacky, so I don't want to touch the front of it. And the back of it has paper, so it makes it easier to handle. But I'll go ahead and trim this up a little bit more when I get off camera. But you don't want to get those sticky pieces on anything else. But these have worked out pretty well today. So there's some tips and tricks. All you can do is try it and see how it happens for you, and then just learn little ways that make it easier for you. I like to have 3 sets of scissors in case one gets sticky. I can just jump to the next. Thanks for watching. Make sure to subscribe. So I've got all my little pieces cut out except one here. Did not cure properly yet. I'll keep an eye on it tonight. But all of the rest I've cut out and I just have drying. So I kind of wait a little bit and then see how it works. But if I can handle it without it getting all stuck to me, I go ahead and remove the paper from the back. Sometimes you can't, it's still sticky and you have to leave it on there, but I go ahead and remove the paper. Now when you're using this type of paper, you're gonna have kind of a foggy side on the back, but it'll still be clear around it and you'll get a nice clear shiny finish on the front. So there's one. For some reason, these have been coming off pretty easily. You just kind of get your nail under the corner and then pull it off as best you can. Sometimes it'll stick in different spots, but these have been coming off really nice and easy. So I'll go ahead and let them dry for several days, and then I'll go in and mark them to be drilled about 1/4 inch apart. And then I'll use my little sander to sand off any of these sharp points or go back and cut them off. So thanks for watching. These turned out pretty good. I have one I still need to work with. It's kind of sticky. It's set a lot thinner than the others. So I think that was why it didn't dry as nicely. Thanks for watching. Let me know if you have any questions. Just try and try again. And at some point you'll get it. Thanks. Good morning. Well, it's been about 24 hours and I've unmolded a lot of my items already. The last video shows you how I cut some of the stones out, but here are some that I'm taking out of the mold. You see how easy that removes? So it's not as close to the stone as the others, but it's an easy way of, oops, I almost dropped it. But it's an easy way of doing a quick little mold. Now I'll go trim these edges here because there's some little pieces sticking up, and I'll just let it dry another couple days just to make sure. Now it came out really good. No bubbles on back. Sometimes there's little bubbles of air and you have to go back in and fill them in. So there's the stones. Now you can see I cover, when you're letting them dry, just kind of cover them so that no dust gets in them. I just use random little plastic covers. The other thing I do so that it's easier to unmold after, you know, every couple uses, I definitely wash them after every use, but prior to using them every about 3-4 uses, I'll spray this Cast and Craft in for easy release. Not that I've ever had a problem getting anything out of, but it just kind of protects the mold, I think, too. So let's work on pulling some of these out just so you see how it works. They come out very easy. So these are little basket centers I'm making for teaching my class coming up. There's a purple one. Sometimes you got to dig down in because this is just a cupcake silicone mold. Here's a little blue. Oh, that came out pretty. Now see, this is the shiny side, and some of these molds come out dull on the other side, which is fine. I'm going to get a group of them together, and this one's already been drilled, but I'll get a group of them together and just brush a light coat of clear resin over it or spray them. But ooh, look at the depth on that. That looks really cool. So I think unmolding is the best part of everything. It's like a surprise. Yeah, see, this one's a little sticky, but it's coming. And I try to do them about 1/4 of an inch deep of resin. Now see, this is still it's a little gummy. Oh, that's going to be cool. Then here's some little oval ones that I have. Let's try, see how this mold is going to do. So I'm just doing some various colors. This is for my basket class, as I said. I sell them online on Etsy and kits, but I'm also going to do a class. Oh my God, that one came out good. That's a pink and a red mixed. I wanted to try to get red, but it looks like more pink came through on this side and more red on this side. So with these little bottoms, it's going to be, I'll drill them, get them ready for the kits. But, you know, people could choose which side they want to use. They can use this side or that side. So let's try a yellow. Let's see what this looks like. So this is orange. Now this is a shallower mold, so they're coming out easier. So there's an orange and yellow with some sparkle. Oh, that's beautiful. I love that side. So it's kind of coming out coral when you mix them. Now these are alcohol inks. So there's some little pieces here. I'll just go by and snip them off and then let them dry. Let's try another purple. This is just so fun. Oh, look at that. Wow. Look at the depth in that. That is so cool. It's weird how sometimes they just float on top. That's beautiful. So my class can decide which color they want and what they want to use. I think I want to keep that one for me. So let's try another of these round. Let's try these round yellow. I like to try out different molds to see which ones work best. And I've got so many molds, but I love them. See, now this is still soft because I said in an earlier video, it takes a little bit longer to dry if it's thinner. So see, this is a thick one. So it's pretty set. This one's a little bit thinner, so it's going to need some more drying time. But it came out of the mold just fine. But this is a mix of a mustard color and yellow. So I put mustard in the middle and then some little bling. So again, they can decide which side they want to use. Thanks for watching. Thanks for watching. And post any questions you may have. Hopefully this helps you in your resining process. And I'll get done remolding the rest of these. Thanks for watching. Bye. So I wanted to show you one more little item that I do. So when these come out of these molds, a lot of times you'll find little pieces that are protruding here, just kind of sticking up. So I go back and I trim them off. You just don't want them to turn out to be too sharp. I make sure to have a clean surface to lay these out to dry further on. And you don't want to, you got to try to keep any of these little cuttings away from the others because they could stick. They could still be need a little bit more curing. So see, you just kind of trim them. It's still soft enough to cut, not lengthwise, but to get these, just the little trims off. And see, this is still very smooth. So I'm just going to really let this one cure because it's thinner. But you could just cut the little, just trim them if you feel like sometimes there's just a little protrusion or a little piece sticking up just in one area. If you think it needs it, you don't have to do it, but I do it because I sell my bottoms and I don't want anyone cutting their fingers or, you know, I don't want to cut my fingers for sure. But see how you could just trim the edge and make it a little bit smoother. If there are any protrusions, some areas don't need it, and then make sure to keep these little clippings away from the rest of it because they could stick to it and then adhere. Okay, that's just a little tip and trick. Thanks for watching. Now here's a nice little purple one that really needs to be trimmed. For some reason, the resin set up around the sides, but it's real soft right now. It's easy to trim. You could do sanding later if you don't like it, but I prefer to just trim it while it's still nice and soft and easy to work with. It's less sanding. I really don't like to sand. So I'm careful not to get these shavings stuck on here. Oh, this side needs it a little bit more. There we go. So you're just kind of skimming the top, and I'm very careful to keep these shavings. And then, oh my God, this one's just beautiful. I'm very careful to keep these shavings separated and be on a clean parchment paper. So see, sometimes you do get these little teeny bubbles. And a good way, if you have a mold that keeps doing that, a good way to do that is to prep the mold with spray or put a little bit of oil around the corners. So I just check them to make sure they're drying right. I usually put them upside down because then that will flatten, because it is still pliable. It helps to flatten and smooth where I've cut a little bit. I know I'm just being very, very picky, but for me, it's important because I sell these basket bottoms and I want people to be happy with what they're getting. And so I try to do my best. Sometimes people still aren't happy. They don't look at the pictures, or who knows. But as long as I'm happy with it, I know I've done my best. I'm happy. Thanks for watching.